I will first speak about this disease, which affect with the same incidence and the same prevalence, both male and female. It is an X-linked disorder. As a rare disease is not so rare, and the prevalence, considering that today most cases affect adults, the prevalence corresponds to at least 3,000 male and female and boys in Western European countries. This disease is characterized by, I would say, main three phenotypes: the cerebral dementing form, which is lethal if not treated in due time, which affect only boys and adult males. The adrenomyeloneuropathy, which is a disease of the spinal cord, which affect adult male and women, and Addison disease, which can be the first symptom of the disease, which affect only boys and adult males, very rarely women. All patients accumulate very long-chain fatty acid in blood and tissue. And one important message is to remind that 65% of boys and adult male are at risk to develop cerebral ALD, and that there is today the possibility not to cure but to treat cerebral ALD to arrest the disease. As I said, adrenal insufficiency can be the first symptom. It can remain the only symptom of the disease for years or even decades. And again, I say again that boys diagnosed with Addison disease and ALD have a 35% risk to develop cerebral ALD up to the age of 12 years. And later on, they are at 100% risk to develop AMN. And in adulthood, they have 35% risk to develop cerebral ALD. The diagnosis is very simple: 1 milliliter of plasma for measurement of very long-chain fatty acid. The ABCD1 gene, which encodes the ALD protein, the ALD protein is an ABC transporter, alpha ABC transporter that homodimerize at the membrane of peroxisome. And there is indirect, not still direct, evidence that this transporter import into the peroxisome very long-chain fatty acid CoA. And when there is a loss of function of this transporter, these very long-chain fatty acid CoA accumulate in cells, are redirected and esterified to various lipids and proteins, and it's through this mechanism that they are deleterious. It's not the absolute accumulation of very long-chain fatty acid as free fatty acid. Before identifying the gene, it was known already that ALD has a quite marked phenotypic variability, and it's an example in which a grandfather first developed AMN, died from cerebral ALD. He had 3 daughters who developed symptoms of AMN. One had a son that has only AMN at 24 years. The other one has only Addison disease at 22 years, and the other one has cerebral ALD and also Addison disease. There is no correlation between genotype and phenotype. In other terms, the ABCD gene mutation cannot predict the phenotype. ABCD gene mutation analysis is useful to make the diagnosis in heterozygous women because their long-chain fatty acids are not always elevated, and it is useful to make prenatal diagnosis. In fact, we have made very little progress about the cause of this phenotypic variability, and which is likely under the influence of environmental factor, epigenetic factor, genetic factor. We have made a whole genome SNP analysis, exome sequencing, and I discussed this morning with Pierre at the breakfast. I think we need to revisit with the most recent genomic techniques the cause, genetic, in the large sense of the term, the genetic cause of this phenotypic variability. Because we have still no marker to predict the phenotype of that given patient, given boy at birth will develop. And it is important because in the US, there is already ongoing and active neonatal screening of the disease. which is not yet the case, unfortunately, in Europe. So to resume, the main phenotype is hymen, which is fully or nearly fully penetrant in male and female. Addison disease is not completely penetrant in male, and there are two main peaks of risk of developing cerebral ALD. One is during childhood, and one is during adulthood. A few words about AMN. It's a spinal cord disease. It's not a demyelinating disease. It's an axonal disease with characterized by impairment in walking, impairment in sensory function, and modern MRI technique, whatever it is, DTI or magnetic transfer imaging, can show abnormalities. But it's not a demyelinating disease, and the physiopathology is certainly quite different from the cerebral demyelination. So the cerebral demyelinating disease, which affect both boys and adults, evolve in two phases. The first one is this one, which is totally asymptomatic, and it is only at this stage that allogenic transplantation or gene therapy can do something. Once the disease has progressed and the patient develops symptoms, even minor symptoms, it is today always too late. We have made absolutely no progress since 30 years to treat this patient at this stage. So again, the importance to question the possibilities that a boy with Addison disease might have ALD, and it's not so rare, is because cerebral ALD can be treatable by allogenic transplantation or now gene therapy, but only at the early stage of the disease. And the follow-up of these boys, and it's the same for adult male with Addison disease, is very simple. Perform cerebral MRI every 6 months for 4 years to 12 years, and once a year up to 50 years to detect the early signs of demyelination. And you don't need to be a neuroradiologist to be an expert of ALD to look that it is always at the same site that the disease starts. You know, this abnormal bright signal in the posterior part of the corpus callosum, or in the anterior part, or in here, or in the auditory pathway in the brainstem, or along the internal pyramidal tract in the brain. It is always at this site. It takes only 10 seconds to read MRI and to look at this site. And it's absolutely crucial to detect these boys or the adult at the early stage. As I mentioned with Pierre and Claude Grisselli at Necker, more than 20 years ago, we demonstrated that allogenic bone marrow transplantation can arrest the progression of the disease, and since more than hundreds of patients has been transplanted successfully. Now, there are still limit and risk of allogenic hematopoietic stem cell transplantation. Not always a perfectly HLA-matched donor or cord blood can be found. And despite significant progress in medical care of transplantation, prevention of GVH, treatment of viral infection, in the last analysis of 35 patients transplanted in France and in the US, in patients who were transplanted with cord blood or CD34 cell from unrelated donor, the mortality was 17%. The need of second transplantation, again, because of lack of failure, 17%, and severe GVH, 30%. And even the patient who survive to second transplant and severe chronic GVH have much, much less good outcome in respect to neurological disability. More recently, with German group in Berlin, we also transplanted adult patients, and it has the same efficacy as in boy. The mortality risk, as expected, is much more significant. In fact, mostly due to infection, in contrast to bugs. And the main cause of infection is adult was due to urinary problem related to spinal cord disease. So it's the reason why, after cloning the gene in 1993 with Pierre, we envisaged to move to gene therapy. And the idea was relatively simple. It took, nevertheless, 15 years of research and development to start the trial. So the idea was to take the CD34 cells from the patient and to correct this 34 cell, introducing a copy of the normal LE gene with a viral vector derived from HIV, the only virus which infects and which can put genetic material in the nucleus of non-dividing cells, allowing also the transmission to progeny. And it was demonstrated in the 1998, but in vitro and not yet in vivo. And then, to follow the same procedure, after correcting the cell, to re-inject the cell to the patient after full myeloablation, with the idea, because the mechanism by which allogeneic transplantation or gene therapy is not fully understood, but the idea is schematically as following: from hematopoietic stem cell in the bone marrow from the pool which has been reinjected, a subset of hematopoietic stem cell go into the brain, differentiate in microglia that are doing the job, are able to arrest the progression of the disease. So we treated 4 boys at early stage without donor. As I said, the CD34 cells were taken from the periphery after GCSF stimulation. The patients were myeloablated. The cells were reinfused, and the procedure was very well tolerated without any complication. I must say that it's day and night between auto-transplantation. 3 weeks after transplantation, the boys were not only looking fine, but there were very rapid hematologic reconstitution. And up to now, there has been no complication of the treatment. And in particular, due to the fact that we use a viral vector that integrate the therapeutic gene in the genome, but everywhere in the coding sequence. And it was important to evaluate the possibility that this integration could not affect the growth of cells as it occurred in previous trial for SCIDX deficiency in Paris and London, but using a different vector. And in fact, it was a work made by Christoph von Kalle in Heidelberg and his team, based on high-throughput sequencing and frequency of retrieval of each integrated fragment itself. He showed over the time that the hematopoietic system remained polyclonal. In other terms, we were unable to detect that any integrant were retrieved more frequently, indicating that there were some subpopulation of cells that were growing abnormally. So it's quite reassuring, good news, even 7 years later, but we have to be very careful. It's clear that lenti are much more safe than previous use of retroviral vector, but I am sure that one day, one patient with additional factor will likely develop leukemia. It will happen with additional patient treated. It will remain minimal risk of the treatment. But nevertheless, up to now, green light. In terms of biological efficacy, I must say that 2 things. First, we found that in long term, there was persistent expression of the AD protein in peripheral blood cells, not only long-lived cells like T and B lymphocytes, but also short-lived cells like granulocyte and monocyte, which per se indicates that the stem cells have been corrected. And but in long term, the correction in the peripheral blood was only 10%, which was surprising even the clinical benefit. We may discuss that later, but this may indicate that the correction in the brain was in fact much higher, but we cannot demonstrate that. Importantly also, there is no indication that in long term there is, through methylation, down-regulation of the transgene expression. I will be, however, careful about the possibilities that in very long terms there could be some exhaustion of the pool of corrected stem cells. Now, concerning the outcome of these 4 patients, the first 2 being reported in Science in 2009, for the first patient, there was no modification since the reporting. The disease has been stabilized as for 14 months after transplant, in the same range as after allogeneic transplantation, and the patient remained with some cognitive deficit due to the progression of the disease in the frontal lobe. Nevertheless, is learning in specialized schools and has a good quality of life. At time of transplant for the second patient, when we reported the clinical benefit, he has no clinical symptom. Nevertheless, this patient was treated at much advanced stage, in fact, at the limit of the indication. And the disease was arrested also early, but then when the disease was arrested, inside the lesion were the demyelinating lesion progressed to destruction, and this patient developed a severe visual loss. Nevertheless, 7 years after, this patient, despite very severe visual loss, despite deficit in visual spatial skill, is in normal school, only 2 grades below the normal level for age, and has a very good quality of life. The next patient, despite his disease, is arrested. I consider it's a failure. This patient initially responded to the treatment. Then there was a relapse, and it took nearly 3 years until the disease was arrested definitively. And because the disease progressed markedly in the frontal lobe, this patient has absolutely no neurologic deficit, is alive, but he has very severe frontal syndrome and is not able to any new learning. So he has a very bad quality of life. Hopefully, because of his frontal syndrome, he is not aware of his condition, but evidently it's not the same for his parents and the entourage. For the 4th patient, it was transplanted at a young age. It was a very aggressive form of the disease. The long-term outcome is certainly the better one. 4 years after treatment, the disease has been arrested. This patient is completely normal, has normal cognitive function, normal life, normal school achievement, even in height level, and it's really a success. Now, when I wanted to compare the effect of gene therapy with the effect of allogenic transplant in a selected group of patients with the same inclusion criteria, and using 2 scores. One is a neurologic score, which evaluates the neurological and cognitive deficit, which has been developed by Jerry Raymond in Baltimore. And you can see the result for all the transplanted patients and the 4 treated patients, no obvious difference. Gene therapy is not doing better, but it's not doing worse. And it's the same if you express the data as mean or plus or minus SD. And if you look at the extent of demyelinating lesions assessed by what is called the low score, it is exactly the same. It is really within what is observed after allogenic transplantation, not better, but not less good. And it is important because the general conclusion is that 7 years of follow-up of gene therapy has shown not only that it has a good safety profile, similar efficacy, not better than allogenic hematopoietic stem cell therapy, with much less risk of mortality and morbidity, and a possibility to do that for all patients. In fact, there is an ongoing trial which is run by a US biotech company with whom who has initially collaborated and asked to continue the work. 7 patients has been already treated, and 3 new ones are being enrolled. I cannot provide any new data. And in the longer term, I hope that we will be also able to propose the same gene therapy for adults to decrease the risk of allogenic transplantation. Single word to end, allogenic transplantation has no effect on Addison disease. It is the same for gene therapy, so it's gene therapy for cerebral disease, not gene therapy for adrenal disease. And to the end, I want to thank, as you can imagine, it's a work of teams also, mostly clinicians, researchers at Saint-Vincent de Paul Hospital, and then Saint-Vincent Kremlin-Bicêtre Hospital, and only few names are mentioned. I would say Nathalie Cartier as a researcher played a major role. I want also to thank very much, to acknowledge very much the team of Christoph von Kalle in Heidelberg, the transplanter for the retrospective analysis of the transplanted LD patient, Salima Hassembe in the lab of Marina Cavazzana, transduced the CD34 cell in the lab, and Alain Fischer made the auto-transplantation of the patient. Thank you.